Welcome to the Interfaith Action for Peace, IFAP. This is Interfaith Forum, Episode 9. The Interfaith Action for Peace, IFAP, is working to build capacities for the spiritual, economic, academic, and cultural enhancement of society and the peaceful coexistence of religious groups in Nigeria. And one of our initiatives is this program called the Interfaith Forum. Today, we will discuss the topic, Getting Involved, Guidelines for Successful Interfaith Engagement. And we have with us today in the studio two highly esteemed guests, namely His Grace, Archbishop John Onaiyekan, the Catholic Archbishop of Abuja. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
And Malam Nuruddin Lemu of the Islamic Education Trust. My name is Abdul Hakim Ajijola. Welcome to the Interfaith Action for Peace, IFAP Forum. Let me start by asking His Eminence, where do we start if you want to get more involved with interfaith? Where do we start?
I would like to make a distinction, not only between unconscious and conscious interfaith action, but also between formal and informal interfaith action. By informal, I mean things that just happen between people or groups that are of faith, different faiths. But as the formal one is when you really sit down and say, I want to do this. Whichever of the two, I believe that the very first place to start is to create a conducive theological environment for interfaith action. Let me explain. In order to be able to engage in interfaith action, one must be able to have a concept of God and a concept of your faith in your God, which makes room for interaction with others. If one's concept of God is that of the God who is only interested in me, and if one's concept about your faith is that of a very exclusive kind of belonging, then you are not even going to look elsewhere for anybody. And I think the effort to open up to others, that must be the starting point. Okay. And as a bishop, I do all I can to promote that. Yes. Keep telling my people, those who listen to me, take your Catholic faith very seriously, but please, don't close in on yourself. Open up to others, because don't forget, others are also children of God. We are not in the church in a reserved coach heading for heaven while the rest of humanity is going to hell. No, we are all struggling together on this journey of faith. We know, we are convinced of what we are doing. There are others too who are convinced. God alone will judge.
But Your Grace, one of the things you've mentioned is about knowing, I guess, the platform, knowing yourself, knowing the basis. It sounds as if you must have some level of what I call education.
My understanding is that, and in fact, my experience is that you don't have to have a degree in theology or anything for this kind of openness to take place. It's more like a spiritual environment. And those of us who deal with different levels of members of our church, we realize that in these matters, sometimes the very simple people have a very high level of spiritual awareness, and they catch what you are trying to tell them. Sometimes even they're already doing it. So, but sometimes, of course, when you come to formal dialogue, and if by dialogue you mean you are going to discuss theological points, well, then you will need to go into all that. But most of the interfaith action it's nothing to do with theological discussion or debate. Yeah, it's more about living together.
Okay, so you live it.
Yes.
Okay. Malam Nuruddin, again, similar question. Where would you say we should start?
I would say for Muslims, the example of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is something that a Muslim should take very seriously. The Prophet was described in the Quran as a rahmah lil alameen, a mercy to the worlds. If your understanding of Islam does not include you being merciful to others, then you have got something wrong to start with. and before you start any formal interfaith dialogue, even informal, you need to go and check your own faith first and understand Islam better. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in the initial period of his mission, lived in Mecca, where the idol worshipping majority of people actually, as a result of the kind of character that he was, nicknamed him Al-Amin, which means the trustworthy or the honest one. And so if as a person you do not take, as a Muslim that is, you don't take the Prophet Muhammad as your role model to try and develop a reputation for honesty, to try and develop a reputation for being trustworthy, then what are you going to show somebody that is inspired by faith? You should be viewed as a solution, not as a problem. Now, as human beings, we try to solve each other's problems in various ways and to various degrees. But I think regarding where to start with interfaith dialogue is to ask yourself, are you the kind of person of faith that is going to be a positive influence, or are you going to be viewed as a problem? So if your understanding of faith is devoid of compassion, is devoid of care, of love for others as you would love for yourself, then I think your first target of conversion is to convert yourself into that person. And if your understanding of that faith does not go in line with the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, then as a Muslim, you've got a problem to start with there. Naturally, if it comes to, all right, you want to move beyond that, it would be, as somebody once put it, family first, or charity would begin at home. Is your family interested in better interfaith relations and better peaceful relations with others, or are they too bigoted? Are they too entrenched in negative stereotypes about others? And that would probably be a place to start. Friends, neighbors, those people who you already have some credibility between, and people who you have some influence. So I think the first port of call is yourself and your immediate environment.
So build the island, the sanity of yourself, then your household, and so on.
As you grow yourself.
Yes. Now, one of the things His Grace mentioned, or that he mentioned, was that you don't really need to be a degree holder per se. And assuming you agree with this, if you don't have that level of education, how do you prevent confusion in terms of protecting your own faith when dealing with interfaith issues?
I think one thing about faith that is very important is that you are whatever you believe by conviction, not by just conformity. You know, we usually take the religion we're born into, and we take it as right, just as a birthright. We are not, for many Muslims, and I would say for many other people too, for most Muslims, we are Muslims by chance, not Muslims by choice. And we need to be Muslims by choice.
Chance in being born Muslims?
Just born Muslims,
okay.
Yeah.
And I think this is the same for a lot of Christians too.
Yeah. And so it is important for Muslims, particularly those who actually care about interfaith, to understand the basis of their faith.
Yes.
However, if you don't try to understand why another person believes what they believe, how do you say you are right and the other is wrong, if you don't have your reasons why you believe you are right and the other is wrong? And even when you'd like to say they are wrong, well, that's from your position now. As humans, we continue to learn. And so humility is one of those things that religion continues to emphasize on us. Curiosity in searching for truth, and sincerity in following whatever level of truth we are exposed to. Part of submission to God's will is that we always are looking at our compass, being God conscious in our choices, and taking what we honestly believe is true. So for a Muslim, that is a lifelong project. Truth is never, you never stop the search. And even if you say, but I believe Quran is true, yes, but the understanding of that continues, and nothing stops you from understanding what other people believe. It either helps confirm you are mistaken in an understanding, or it helps confirm you are right in what you understood. So there's no harm in understanding what others believe, so long as your conscience is sincere. And it's really between you and God, not what do other people fear.
Your Grace, if I may also come back to, we talked about the level of requisite education. And again, the question really is, if you don't, what level of educational exposure do you really need to have, essentially to defend not just your faith, but then the resulting interfaith?
Let me say that my own understanding of interfaith action especially has nothing to do with defending my faith.
Okay.
It has to do with serving God and welcoming anybody with whom I can go on this journey. I don't have to defend my faith, since I have it already.
Okay.
The tendency is to think that dialogue means you sit there and we're arguing.
That's debate.
That's a debate. That is not dialogue.
Yes.
I prefer to see dialogue as in a very sharp definition that Cardinal gave in those days when he was president of the Interreligious Council of the Vatican. He said dialogue means you talk and I listen, I talk and you listen. Now, when you talk and I listen, I don't tell you what you are going to say. Just say whatever you like. I will listen and I pick whatever I like. And I will get some things that will enrich me. And I do hope you will listen also when I am talking. And the result of that is that we discover our common grounds, the values that we share. And on the basis of those values, then common action can come out. There can be no common action without common thinking, common thought, common conviction. And between Christianity and Islam, I have discovered that there's so much in common. And
would you say there's more in common than not?
This is not a question of more or less, as if you list out a list of topics.
Okay.
Because for me, the belief in God is more than half of our belief.
Okay.
Just that, if you can really believe that that person believes in the same God as you, that is already more than half of all that makes me a Christian. So it's not a question of more or less. There are a lot of other things that the Muslims believe which I respect, but which I don't share. But for me, many of them will not even be very, very important or serious. And there are many things that I do which Muslims don't do, but not. So I think this is where we go to once you go to the basic element, when I see that somebody believes in God, and it is the same God that I believe in, a whole lot of things come out of that as a consequence. One of the things that come, for example, is that we listen to the same God, and luckily, as far as Christianity and Islam is concerned, the will of God for us in terms of justice, kindness, compassion is the same. We may differ about how much, whether you should fast in Ramadan or not. But I think we can carry on.
There's a lot of common ground.
We can cope with it. There's a lot of common ground. That is what I really want to say. Talking of dialogue, especially when you are talking of formal dialogue going into this theological discussion, it is something that for me is not really very important. In any case, not everybody can get involved in that. My professor of interfaith dialogue in Rome, which that is way back in the 70s or even 60s, told us that dialogue with everybody is not for everybody.
Interesting.
Which means not everyone. And you notice it now. You say, I don't know about, you must have had the experience. There are many of my fellow Catholics, not to even talk of Christians, who really just can't even sit down and listen to a Muslim cleric talk with them. It's just not there. They just don't feel like
they're not disposed to it.
And during our NIREC experience, there were one or two Muslim scholars who came for the first meeting, and after that they couldn't continue.
Interesting.
Because they said they can't just sit in a meeting and hear the way Christians are talking. But thanks be to God, we had still 25 who stayed and who listened, and we talked to one another. And that is where.
If I may, flowing from that, Your Grace, what are the immediate objectives of dialogue and action? And as you go along, I would want to know what are more important and why.
I think if dialogue is based not on slogans but on real concrete action of faith, the first objective of dialogue action is to help us to know and love God better. Because God is always first, you know. Yeah. So when I am working together with a person of faith who believes in God, we are trying to understand our God better. But the second is very close to it also, know and love one another better. Later on, you can then talk about how do we contribute to, how can we, through interfaith action, contribute to the good, common good of our society, whether in the area of good governance, in the area of education, health, just name it. Okay. And here the list is
quite lengthy.
Quite lengthy. Yes.
Nuruddin, again, what would you say are the immediate objectives of the dialogue and action?
There's a proverb in Hausa which says, if you understand somebody's behavior, then living with them is easier.
Interesting.
The more you understand about people, the more you know how to live with them. If you know nothing, then you're just left to imagination, and you're just like a doctor who wants to prescribe without doing a diagnosis. And so for better understanding of each other, particularly when there's the potential that people would use religion as a means of dividing others, the more you know about what other people believe, the more comfortable you feel with them, the more you realize how much common ground you have. And this is where I think when we look at how we spend 90% of our time during the day, from waking up, when you put aside the times you spend for praying and just devotional acts of worship, most of your working life is in something that everybody agrees is good. You know, so Imam Shatibi, a great Muslim jurist, said, in the objectives of Sharia, what they call the maqasid of Sharia, all revealed religions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and some others that might be out there, have the same grand objectives of enjoining what is right, in other words, promoting good, and reducing suffering, reducing wrong or evil. And so when we look at how we live our lives, we usually, for sake of convenience, divide things into ministries, you know, health and education and security and sports and this and that. And in every area, you would find Muslims and Christians already working together. And so interfaith action, unconsciously in many ways, is already taking place. The challenge is how to do it more deliberately so that people do not use faith for retrogressive purposes. And what dialogue does is creates a better understanding so that you can move further. Somebody once said, to travel far, go with others. To travel fast, go alone. But while you may say, well, as Muslims, let's try and improve Nigeria alone, since we all understand each other a little better, we could go further. No, you can arrange things, but there's a limit to how much you can go, because Christians are just as concerned about the future of Nigerians as Muslims. And so for the future of Nigeria, for the future of humanity, interfaith dialogue and the action that comes is imperative. And as His Grace said, there are a lot of people who are not probably very intellectually predisposed to the theological sides of religion and what's our common ground, but what they know is you're a human being, you're a good person, and we can work together. And I think it is that working together that itself helps you understand the other better, so that even though you don't read and you don't discuss religion, you're able to see the humanity in the other person and realize this is a good human being. Whatever his religion, if that goodness comes as a result of his faith, or is there while he is still somebody of another faith, it seems his faith is not, however bad or different it is, it's good enough to produce somebody like him.
Are you optimistic that the interfaith in action can address the current challenges we have.
Like corruption.
Corruption is exactly
like petroleum subsidy. Those are things which we must be talking about.
Okay.
Yes, it is. I think at the highest level, Christian and Muslim leaders should be able to come out with very, very clear statements. Say this is wrong. Where you will keep hearing billions are missing and nobody is held responsible, we should be able to tell them that God does not approve of this, because all these missing millions, billions belong to the people, and people are poor and hungry because a few people have stolen money they don't even know how to use. No, that kind of message, we need to hear it more.
We need to hear it. Excellent.
Yes.
Well, Nuru, do you have any examples that you can give us from your perspective?
I think both past and contemporary, any student of Islamic studies, particularly during the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and the early caliphs, you know, the kind of respect people of other faiths were given, interfaith dialogues in the mosque in Medina. I mean, fortunately, yes, this is coming up now where mosques are being used, but you still find in a lot of mosques some Muslims not yet comfortable with Christians visiting the mosque, so we definitely have a lot of issues. However, having said that, we found during the crisis in Kanu, the bombings of some of these churches, you actually had Muslims going and protecting churches, similar to what we found in Cairo, where members of the Muslim Brotherhood actually surrounded the Coptic Christian churches to show this was unacceptable. So you've had in Mina, a little place, we had similar incidents of Christians being protected. We've got times when Muslims in demonstrations want to pray and they're surrounded by Christians to protect them while they pray. So I think there are many areas where this has succeeded on small and grand scales in the health sector. Faith-based organizations have gradually got a greater credibility for delivering than many other organizations, and I think interfaith organizations would even have much greater credibility because they kill more than one bird with one stone. They deliver and they show a united front with bigger backing.
Well,
one point
final word, sir.
Yeah, final word. We should make sure we are not concentrating this whole business on the leadership of religious communities, but rather on the body of religious communities. And here I would like to mention, for example, what the women in Abuja are doing, women of faith, just women that are Christians and Muslims. They gather together in Merit House, huge number of them.
Interesting. And
on a seminar just to say, we must stop this fight, this killing. Christians and Muslims, and came out with a joint communique. My young people, the youths, Christian youth, Muslim youth, if you don't know, in Abuja here, they are meeting regularly. And they went planting trees.
Okay.
Just doing something. It was supposed to be planting trees in response to climate change, but it was not really planting trees that was important. What was important was that we saw these young boys all along the road. They even stopped traffic. And the people were asking from their car, what's happening here? And the youth say, we are Christian and Muslim youth, we are planting trees, tree of peace.
Friends, colleagues, brothers and sisters, we're very grateful for you to find time to spend with us. We'd be grateful also if you would find time and follow us on Twitter and Facebook. The Twitter hashtag is *IFAP, and you can search for Interfaith Forum *IFAB on Facebook. Your Grace Archbishop John Onaiyekan, the Catholic Archbishop of Abuja, we're very, very grateful for your time and your presence.
Thank you.
Nuruddin Lemo, Malam, we're very grateful for you to come here from all the way from IET in Mina. We thank you for your time and for your efforts. May the Almighty be with both of you and with all of us. Amen. Viewers, please join us in enjoying what is good and discouraging what is bad. Keep the faith, keep the peace till we meet again. Thank you very much.